mud, plagues, and knights in shining armor. That's the Middle Ages we all imagine, right? A dark, gritty world where everyone was miserable and dirty. But what if I told you the real medieval world was far stranger, more complex, and surprisingly more advanced than most history books ever let on? Some of what you're about to hear was just normal daily life. Some of it was written into law, and some was believed to be God's will. Today, we're exploring 30 medieval facts that sound completely fake, but are absolutely true. By the end of this video, you'll see the Middle Ages in a way you never imagined. Let's start with a big one. Fact 1. Medieval people bathed often. Contrary to popular belief, Europeans didn't wallow in filth. Public bathhouses were common in major cities like London, Paris, and Constantinople. These weren't just tubs of water. They were social hubs with hot baths, steam rooms, and areas to relax, talk, and even do business. Bathing only declined after repeated plague outbreaks, when doctors claimed warm water opened the skin's pores and let disease in. So medieval people weren't lazy or filthy. They were following the science of their time. Fact 2. Vikings were surprisingly well-groomed. We picture them as savage, shaggy raiders, but archaeologists have found combs, razors, tweezers, and even ear cleaners in their graves. Vikings bathed weekly, and English records actually complained that Viking men were too attractive and were stealing the attention of local women. For them, hygiene wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a status marker and a source of personal pride. Fact 3. Bright clothing showed your wealth. The color of your clothes instantly broadcast your social class. Expensive dyes like red, purple, and blue were painstakingly produced from rare plants, insects, and minerals. Only the wealthy could afford these vibrant colors. The poor? They wore the cheap stuff, browns, grays, and undyed fabrics. One glance at someone's outfit could tell you their entire social standing. Fact 4. Animals were put on trial. Yes, you heard that right. In medieval Europe, animals could be arrested, tried in a court of law, and even sentenced for their crimes. Pigs were the most common defendants, sometimes sentenced to death for injuring or killing children. But rats, locusts, and beetles were also brought to court, complete with lawyers on both sides. Medieval society believed all creatures were part of God's moral order, so justice had to apply to animals too. Fact 5. Knights weren't always noble. The romantic idea of the honorable, chivalrous knight is mostly a fairy tale. Many knights were just paid soldiers' mercenaries who fought for land, money, or political favor. Loyalty was flexible. A knight might switch sides in the middle of a war if a better offer came along. Chivalry existed, but it was an ideal, not a guarantee of good behavior. Fact 6. Books were chained in libraries. Books were so incredibly rare and valuable that libraries literally chained them to the shelves. Each manuscript was copied by hand, a process that could take years to complete. Readers could come and study them, but the books never left the building. Some of these chained libraries still exist today, silent witnesses to just how precious knowledge was. Fact 7. Doctors used urine to diagnose disease. Medieval doctors practiced something called uroscopy. They would examine a patient's urine, looking at its color, clarity, smell, and even taste to diagnose illness. They followed a system called humor theory, which divided the body into 4 humors. While it's wildly inaccurate by modern standards, it was a systematic approach, not just random guesswork. Fact 8. Castles had toilets built right into the walls. They were called garderobes, basically stone seats built into the exterior walls of the castle. Waste dropped directly down into a pit, the moat, or a nearby river. It was unpleasant, sure, but it was an effective system for its time. You can still see these openings in the walls of some castles today. Fact 9. Children started working at age 7. Childhood, as we know, it ended very early in the Middle Ages. By the time they were 7, Most children were already working on farms, in workshops, or as apprentices. Formal education was a luxury reserved mostly for the wealthy or those joining the clergy. For most families, survival was a group effort, and child labor was a simple necessity. Fact 10. Church bells controlled time. Most people didn't own clocks, so how did they know when to wake up, work, or eat? They listened to the church bells. The bells signaled times for prayer, the start and end of the workday, meal times, and even curfews. Life moved in rhythms dictated by the church, not by the minutes and hours on a clock. Fact 11. Siege weapons were wildly inventive. From giant trebuchets that could fling 300-pound stones over castle walls to massive battering rams and multi-story siege towers, medieval engineers developed ingenious ways to attack fortresses. Innovation in warfare often outpaced imagination. Fact 12. Castles had secret passageways. It wasn't just in movies. Many castles really did have hidden staircases, secret tunnels, and escape routes. These allowed kings, queens, and nobles to flee unseen during an attack or a rebellion, or to move around the castle without being noticed. Fact 13. Their plague responses were surprisingly complex. During the Black Death, medieval cities enforced quarantines. They closed shops, cleaned the streets, and marked the houses of the sick with symbols to warn others away. These measures weren't perfect, but they show an early understanding of public health and containment. Fact 14. Superstitions ruled daily life. People carried charms for good luck, avoided unlucky numbers, and consulted astrology before making big decisions. Even kings would check their horoscopes before heading into battle or arranging a marriage. It was a world where the supernatural felt very real. Fact 15. They ate some strange and wonderful foods. Medieval nobles loved exotic spices like saffron, cinnamon, and pepper, which were imported from faraway lands and cost a fortune. Their dishes sometimes featured bizarre combinations we'd never think of, like putting sugar on meat or heavy spices on fish. Fact 16. Guilds controlled craftsmanship. Trades like blacksmithing, baking, and weaving were tightly regulated by powerful organizations called guilds. Apprentices would train for years under a master, ensuring high quality and protecting the trade secrets of their craft. Guilds set prices, enforced rules, and looked after their members. Fact 17. Apprenticeships started incredibly early. We mentioned kids working young, but many were sent away to become apprentices by age 10. They would live with their master, working as laborers in exchange for food, lodging, and the promise of learning a valuable trade. Fact 18. Education was for the elite. The vast majority of peasants never learned to read or write. Schools were typically attached to monasteries and were reserved for the children of the wealthy or for those destined for a life in the church. Fact 19. Astrology was considered a science. It wasn't seen as a silly superstition. Scholars and leaders believed the stars genuinely influenced life on Earth. Decisions about when to plant crops, start a battle, or even get married were often guided by star charts. Fact 20. Religious festivals dominated the calendar. The year was structured around feasts, saints' days, and church holidays. These weren't just solemn occasions. They involved huge public celebrations with processions, dances, and communal meals that brought entire towns together. Fact 21. Medicine included some very strange practices. Bloodletting with leeches or knives was a common treatment for almost everything. Doctors believed that by removing excess blood, they could rebalance the body's humors and restore health. They also relied heavily on herbal remedies. Fact 22. Punishments were public and shocking. Justice was a spectator sport. Punishments like being put in the stocks, public branding, or executions were carried out in the town square for everyone to see. The goal was to make a terrifying example out of criminals to maintain order. Fact 23. Women could have some social mobility. While their options were limited, women could gain influence. A strategic marriage, taking over a husband's business as a widow, or joining a guild could lead to power. Some women became influential landowners, or even key political advisors. Fact 24. Trade and markets were vibrant and global. Medieval markets weren't just for selling local produce. They were hubs of international trade, featuring exotic goods like spices from India, silks from China, and wines from France. Merchants traveled thousands of miles, connecting Europe to Asia and Africa. Fact 25. They built architectural marvels that still amaze us. Without modern technology, they constructed soaring cathedrals and incredible bridges. Innovations like flying buttresses, stone vaults, and intricate gargoyles combined stunning beauty with brilliant engineering. Fact 26. Myths and legends were taken seriously. Dragons, basilisks, and unicorns weren't just bedtime stories. Many scholars and ordinary people believed they were real creatures. You can find detailed illustrations of them in medieval manuscripts, right alongside real animals like lions and elephants. Fact 27. They had surprising hygiene practices beyond bathing. People used herbal mouth rinses to freshen their breath, applied scented oils to their skin, and carried small bouquets of flowers or wore perfumes to mask odors and stay smelling pleasant. Fact 28. Animals were kept as pets and status symbols. Just like today, people loved their pets. Nobles kept cats and dogs, but also more exotic animals like monkeys and parrots to show off their wealth and sophistication. Fact 29. Entertainment included jousting and theater. Tournaments were huge public events, not just a sport, but a political spectacle. Traveling performers would also move from town to town, staging morality plays and puppet shows for the common folk. And finally, Fact 30. Kings and queens had unexpected and eccentric habits. Medieval rulers were human, with quirks history often ignores. King Edward II of England loved tournaments more than governing. Elizabeth of Hungary would personally care for the sick and the poor. Others kept unusual pets or maintained vast, secret gardens. The Middle Ages were not simply dark or backward. They were structured, symbolic, and deeply human. We've seen hygiene, law, labor, superstition, and incredible innovation, all coexisting in one fascinating period. If history feels a little more alive to you after this video, subscribe to ChronosCurator. We uncover the hidden truths, mysteries, and forgotten stories that shape our world. Thanks for watching.